Am I the bad guy for not forgiving my mom after accusing me of something I did not do? I'm a 27-year-old man and the middle child of 3 boys. My relationship with my family has been rocky, especially with my mother, and I've been grappling with the fallout from a situation that unfolded about a year ago. At the time, I was living with my fiancée, who was pregnant with our first child. I used to call my mom during my long commute home from work to catch up, and she would usually answer. However, one day, I called multiple times and got no response. I thought maybe she was busy, so I didn't think much of it at first. When I finally reached my dad, he told me my mom was sick and couldn't talk. I decided to ask my older brother to check in on her, and he got a quick reply while my messages remained unread. This silence continued for days, and when I finally managed to get my mom on the phone, she abruptly told me she didn't want to talk and hung up. I was left confused and hurt, questioning what I could have possibly done to deserve this treatment. As weeks turned into months, my brother tried to find out what was going on, but my parents were tight-lipped. I was mentally tormented, replaying every interaction I had with my mom, trying to figure out what had gone wrong. I eventually decided to focus on my growing family, especially with my daughter's due date approaching. When my daughter was born, my mom expressed anger that she wasn't allowed to see her grandchild, despite the fact that I still had no idea why I was being shut out. Months passed, and my brother continued to visit our parents, but I remained distant. Then one weekend, he finally revealed the reason for my mom's behavior. She had accused me of stealing items from their attic during my last visit home. The items in question were not valuable, just mugs, Christmas decorations, and some perfume. I was furious. I had spent months wondering if I had offended her in some way, only to find out that I was being accused of something I didn't do. As time went on, my brother informed me that my mom had found the items she thought I had stolen. But instead of taking responsibility, she believed my brother had returned them to make me look innocent. This situation spiraled further when my dad, who had initially supported my mom's accusations, began to realize that something was seriously wrong with her mental state. Eventually, she was hospitalized for her delusions. While she was in and out of the hospital, I started receiving messages from her through my fiancé, expressing regret and a desire to reconnect. She wanted to meet and talk things over, but I was still filled with anger and hurt. The thought of facing her or my dad made my blood boil. They had accused me of stealing, and I felt abandoned, with only my brother standing by me. Despite the pleas from my family to consider reconciliation, I couldn't shake the pain of the months I had spent in turmoil. I had even lied to coworkers about my mom's well-being to avoid discussing the situation. Now, I'm left wondering if I'm the bad guy for refusing to forgive my mom and meet with her after everything that happened. I just don't want to go back to how things were before. Am I wrong for feeling this way?
Am I the bad guy for breaking up with my boyfriend while he was in hospital? This story takes place a little over a year ago, and it's something I've been grappling with ever since. I want to share my experience, and I hope it resonates with others who have faced similar challenges. For the sake of privacy, I'll change the names of the people involved. Let's call my ex-boyfriend Zach, his father Trevor, his stepmother Melissa, and his mother Sophie. At the time, I was 31 years old and had been dating Zach, who was 36, for about 18 months. I had a history of making questionable dating choices, often finding myself in relationships with men who had anger issues or who were unfaithful. So when I noticed some red flags in Zach, I didn't think much of it. He had shared with me that he had a complicated relationship with his dad and stepmother. After his marriage ended, he moved in with them, but things went south when he agreed to take care of their beloved dog while they attended a wedding. On the day they were supposed to leave, Zach left home before they did, claiming he would return soon. Instead, he ended up stranded on a country lane, intoxicated and unable to call for help. This incident set the stage for the chaotic pattern that would unfold in our relationship. As we dated, Zach began asking me to move in with him. Initially hesitant due to the relatively short time we had been together, I eventually agreed about 6 months later. However, a month before my move-in date, I surprised him with a visit one evening. When I arrived, he was visibly drunk, slurring his words, and struggling to walk. He expressed that he missed me and felt lonely, which led to a long walk to help him sober up. In a moment of misguided support, I told him that sometimes I had enough strength for the both of us. Little did I know how that would come back to haunt me. The night before our planned visit, Zach informed me that he needed to see his mother instead, as she wasn't feeling well. Not wanting to delay my plans, I encouraged him to visit her while I went to see my aunt. When I called him later to check in, he told me that his mother didn't want visitors, so he turned back home. A couple of hours later, I called him again and could hear that he was slurring his speech. He admitted to going out drinking with a friend instead of staying home. At that moment, I felt a wave of anxiety wash over me. I was terrified that he might have gotten into an accident, so I called the police to report him missing. They conducted a search, but thankfully he returned home the next morning. After a heartfelt conversation about the chaos in our relationship, I made the difficult decision to break up with him. I started looking for a new place to live, but 2 weeks later, we reconciled. During our reunion, we discussed his drinking habits again, and I set clear boundaries. If he brought chaos into my life again, we would be done. 6 weeks later, I visited a friend who lived a couple of hours away. I planned to stay the night, but halfway through my visit, I decided I wanted to go home. I texted Zach to remind him not to lock the door from the inside, as I would be back in a few hours. When I arrived home just after midnight, I was alarmed to find the windows open, the lights on, and the door unlocked. As I entered the house, I noticed he had sent me several messages expressing that he was struggling with his mental health. The tone of his texts was concerning, so I called the police again, fearing for his safety. I discovered a significant number of empty beer bottles in the living room, and despite my attempts to reach him, he wasn't answering his phone. Feeling overwhelmed, I went to bed, relieved to be free of the chaos for the moment. The next morning, I received a call from the police asking me to pick him up because he had lost his phone, car, and keys. I reluctantly agreed to take him to his father's house, but I reminded him that he needed to give me some space to figure things out if he continued down this path. After some back and forth, he finally agreed. The following day, I went to work as usual and called the letting agent to give notice on our apartment. When I returned home that evening, I found a pillow placed right by the door. Not wanting to deal with whatever situation he had created, I decided to take a long walk while talking to a cousin on the phone. Upon returning home, I noticed a small pill on the floor. I picked it up, thinking it had just dropped. As I put away my groceries, I noticed some beer cans in the trash. Digging them out to recycle, I stumbled upon crumpled pieces of paper. To my horror, they were suicide letters, detailing where he had gone and expressing that he was done with life. In a panic, I called Trevor, Zach's father, who hadn't seen him since the morning. I also contacted the police, who sent out a search team based on the letter's contents. The weight of the situation was immense, and I was left grappling with the consequences of my choices and the chaos that had unfolded in our lives. This experience taught me a lot about boundaries, mental health, and the importance of recognizing when a relationship is no longer healthy. It was a challenging journey, but I hope that by sharing my story, others might find the strength to prioritize their well-being in difficult situations. I found myself in a situation that I never imagined I would face. My boyfriend had been struggling with his mental health for a while, but things took a serious turn one night. After a concerning episode, he ended up in the hospital. It was a chaotic night filled with worry and uncertainty. I remember searching for him in the cold, dark woods, alongside his father, who was also unwell and having difficulty breathing. We were both desperate to find him, and thankfully the police were able to convince him to come out of the dense area where he had been hiding. Once he was taken to the hospital, it became clear that he had not taken a life-threatening overdose, but he was highly intoxicated. It was a relief to know he was safe, but the situation was far from over. During his time in the hospital, he opened up about his struggles with mental health, which led to his admission into a mental health facility. I decided to visit him. I brought his laptop, hoping to provide some comfort. However, I also had something important to discuss. I had made the difficult decision to end our relationship. I felt that it was the right choice for both of us, and I had already given notice on our shared apartment, meaning we both had 28 days to find new living arrangements. Not long after my visit, I received a call from Sophie, a mutual friend. She urged me to withdraw my notice so that he would have a place to stay while he worked on his recovery. She suggested that I could apply for benefits on his behalf and cover the rent until he got back on his feet. I appreciated her concern, but I knew that I had to stick to my decision. I ended the call feeling overwhelmed. In the days that followed, my ex reached out to me repeatedly, trying to convince me to reconsider. His messages ranged from heartfelt pleas to accusations, questioning my strength and commitment. He reminded me of times when I had told him I was strong enough to handle tough situations, implying that I was abandoning him when he needed me the most. I eventually moved out a weekend before he expected me to. A neighbor later informed me that he showed up at our old place on the day he thought I would be moving. It was a tough situation all around, and I couldn't help but wonder if I had made the right choice. Was I wrong for breaking up with him while he was in the hospital? Reflecting on everything, I realized that while I wanted to support him, I also needed to prioritize my own well-being. It was a painful decision, but sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that lead to personal growth.
Naked wine parties. Double question. I, 22F, have a big issue with my BF 21M 6 months and his relationship with his best friend, 21F. I found myself in a situation that felt like a scene from a bizarre romantic comedy, only it was my real life. At 22 years old, I was navigating a relationship with my boyfriend, who was 21, and things took a turn when I learned about his best friend, a girl named Anne, who was also 21. They had known each other for 4 years, and when we started dating 6 months prior,
He assured me that she was a lesbian. I was skeptical, especially since she had a child, which made me wonder about the truth behind his claims. Initially, I tried to be open-minded. I even met Anne and found her to be quite likable. We began hanging out one-on-one when my boyfriend was busy, and I thought we were building a friendship. I wasn't typically a jealous person, but as time went on, I started to feel uneasy. Things escalated when my boyfriend moved into a new apartment and invited me to live with him. To my surprise, Anne moved into the same building, which made me uncomfortable. She began spending the night at our apartment, and I couldn't help but wonder why she couldn't just sleep in her own place. Then came the day that changed everything. My boyfriend and I finally had a day off together, but instead of spending it with me, he left to attend a naked wine party at Anne's apartment. Yes, you heard that right, a naked wine party. I was shocked and hurt. I packed my things in a fit of frustration, and when my boyfriend returned, he found me upset. He dismissed my feelings, claiming I was being too insecure. I was at a crossroads, questioning if I was overreacting or if my instincts were right to feel like he was prioritizing her over me. As I sought advice from friends and online communities, the consensus was clear. This situation was not normal. Many pointed out that the combination of alcohol and nudity could easily lead to complications, especially in a committed relationship. I realized I had to take a stand for myself. I didn't want to be the controlling girlfriend, but I also wouldn't tolerate disrespect. After some soul-searching, I decided to confront my boyfriend about the boundaries that had been crossed in their friendship. We had a long conversation where I expressed my feelings and concerns. He agreed to cut ties with Anne, but there was a catch. I had to be the one to tell her. I was uncomfortable with that idea, fearing it would give him an easy way back into her life if things didn't work out between us. Ultimately, I made the difficult decision to break up with him. I called my dad for support, packed my things, and left. I deleted both my boyfriend and Anne from social media, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. They both bombarded my phone with messages, some apologetic, others angry. Anne accused me of ruining her best friend's life, while my ex seemed to be mad at her for the fallout. In the end, I realized that I had to prioritize my own well-being. I learned that sometimes stepping away from a relationship that doesn't respect your boundaries is the healthiest choice you can make. It was a tough lesson, but one that I would carry with me as I moved forward. I never thought I would find myself in a situation like this, but here we are. It all started about 6 months into my relationship with my boyfriend, who I'll call Jake. We were both young, just 21, and navigating the ups and downs of dating. Things were going well, or so I thought, until I learned about his best friend, who was a girl. At first, I didn't think much of it. After all, friendships can be platonic, right? But as time went on, I started to feel uneasy about their connection. It wasn't just the late-night texts or the inside jokes that made me feel excluded. It was the fact that Jake seemed to prioritize her over me in ways that made me uncomfortable. One day, I overheard Jake talking about a naked wine party he was planning to attend with her and a group of friends. Yes, you heard that right, a naked wine party. I was taken aback. I couldn't believe he would even consider going to something like that, especially without me. When I confronted him about it, he brushed it off, claiming it was all in good fun and that I was overreacting. But deep down, I felt a knot in my stomach. I decided to put my foot down. I told him that I wasn't comfortable with him attending these parties, especially since it seemed to involve a level of intimacy that I wasn't okay with. His reaction was surprising. He became defensive and insisted that I was being controlling. It was at that moment I realized that maybe I was dealing with someone who didn't respect my feelings. After a few more weeks of tension and arguments, I made the difficult decision to end the relationship. It was hard, but I knew I deserved better than someone who would prioritize a party over my feelings. I felt a sense of relief wash over me, but I also wondered if I had made the right choice. In the aftermath, I learned that Jake had been blaming his friend for his behavior, which only confirmed my suspicions about his character. I even found out that there were rumors swirling about whether he might be the father of her child, but honestly, I didn't trust him anymore. Reflecting on everything, I realized that I had dodged a bullet. I didn't want to be with someone who would put me in a situation like that, especially if he was going to be a questionable partner and potentially a bad father. I learned that sometimes letting go is the best thing you can do for yourself. Now, I'm focusing on myself and what I want in a relationship. I've come to understand that I deserve someone who respects my boundaries and values our connection. It's a tough lesson, but I'm grateful for the clarity it has brought me. Here's to new beginnings and finding someone who truly appreciates me.